5 ways conversational AI transform your lead engagement and sales process, presented by Conversica and Martech. I'm your host, Cynthia Ramsaran. Before we begin, if you have any audio issues, just click on the screen to enable your audio. And if you have any viewing issues, just use the Q&A section at any time to communicate with us. You can send questions directly to the speakers about their presentation at any time. Without further ado, let's get to the presentation. Joining us today from Conversica are Rashmi Vittal, Chief Marketing Officer, and Amanda DePaul, Director of Demand Gen. Welcome to you both. I'll turn things over to you.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. And Amanda and I are thrilled to be here with you all today. I think we have a really exciting topic. And we're just going to really walk through some of the best practices and just really application use cases of how you could use conversational AI today in your marketing and sales funnel. But first, the reason why, what we want to kind of start off with, why we said that there's 5 ways to use conversational AI, it stems from 5 common frustrations about the lead engagement and sales process. And now look, Amanda and I have talked to a ton of marketing leaders and sales leaders, and here's just a few examples of common topics that arise. So what do marketers say? Well, I hear from so many marketers that leads are just not getting followed up on. And from that perspective, Amanda, from your end, what do you hear sales leaders say?
Sales leaders are often pushing back and saying, well, how qualified are these leads even before we get them?
Yeah, it is a common problem there, and we'll get to some of the answers into that. But the second thing we always hear is that, how about this one? I'm not satisfied with my webinar or event attendance and ROI. In today's world, how many webinars are we holding? How many events are in the virtual world are we having? And now as we move into this hybrid state, you're going to invest further in your webinar and event programs. But on that other end, when we think about talking to sales leaders in terms of are they driving people to these webinar events, what do you hear?
Usually there's pushback in that the outreach that sales is conducting isn't resulting in connects. And so when that outreach doesn't result in connects, it kind of disheartens the sales team and causes them to sort of not really want to even bother. So why am I even reaching out if I'm not going to connect with anybody?
Yeah, exactly. And then the frustration continues, right? I know that there's so many facets, as you and I both know, there's so many facets in cultivating the various demand gen programs to attract high quality leads at the top of the funnel, but then be able to nurture and curate those and evolve those and push those through the funnel. One of the things that always frustrates marketing and sales leaders is the fact that marketing uses content syndication as a key way for driving net new names. But one of the things that frustrates us is that please don't ignore those leads that come from content syndication, especially if they've engaged and shown intent and are actually in market. And I think a little bit on the sales side, they would consider this as what, Amanda?
A waste of time. So usually, the pushback that I hear is we just need meetings. We don't have time to go cultivate these relationships with these content syndication, high up in the funnel type leads. I just need meetings. And so I need to do whatever activity is going to yield me meetings in the immediate future.
Yeah, no doubt. And we all want to get that too, right? But, and then what you have is the next thing is that if you need more meetings, there's this other side of it as well, which marketers get super frustrated about, is that what do I do with all these no response, meaning that outreach has been done, but they had some high intent leads, and maybe now they've gone inactive or dormant over, maybe it's been 90 days, maybe it's been more than that. What would be sales thought on that?
I think that they feel that as well because they deal with stalled opportunities all the time. So while marketers feel it up higher in the funnel when, we're trying to get people to convert to MQL or we're trying to get to convert to meetings and they're not responding, even after they've converted to a meeting, sales can deal with people ghosting them or going dark or, losing a champion. And that's equally frustrating for them as it is for marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the fifth frustration is really a culmination of everything above, just kind of for marketers is, we do sign up for pipeline numbers. Our MBOs are all catered, part of our MBOs is catered around, are we able to bring enough meetings in? Are we able to get the pipeline that's needed to support the sales organization? So I know myself, I want to see more of those MQLs or marketing qualified accounts, if you're following an ABM program, turn into meetings and pipeline. And I think very simply for sales, Amanda, that translates to
I don't have enough pipeline.
Pretty much. So as you can see, look, there's a lot of similarities between the frustrations that marketing leaders have and the frustrations that sales leaders have. They really are coming from perhaps different perspectives, but ultimately the outcome is the same, which is you want to be able to drive thorough outreach. You want to be able to turn those inbound leads into meetings. You want to be able to create healthier pipeline. You want to be able to push things through the funnel. All right, so let's talk a little bit about why this happens, Amanda. So why is there inconsistent customer engagement?
Yeah, so, sales has a lot of responsibility in following up with a lot of leads at volume, and that leaves a lot of open opportunity for things to go wrong. So we did a study, we do one every year, where we basically sort of secret shop a set of accounts and we try to figure out, how well are these accounts conducting their follow-up? And we put everything into 4 categories, which we call the 4 Ps. And those 4 Ps are persistence, promptness, personalization, and performance. And the results that we found even last year, even in this very digital first world where you would think, people are really on top of the digital inquiries that they're getting, we still found that the majority of accounts sort of fell victim to a lot of these issues that come up over and over again. So we found that, there was often inconsistent execution. We know that it takes over 12, 13, 14 touches to get a hold of somebody, and often we were finding these accounts were only reaching out to us 1 or 2 times, and then we never heard from them again. We found that, the response time was pretty slow. So even here at Conversica, we aim for a 30-minute or less touch on high quality leads, like demo requests and contact us form fills. We found these accounts really, on average, got back to us in about 9 hours. And in today's digital world, it's pretty easy to go find something else to research in 9 hours. So the last couple here are, lack of personalization at scale. So a lot of the responses we got were not personalized, super form letter vibe. And in some cases, they didn't even use our name. So we found that 70% of the companies that we reached out to didn't bother with any personalization at all. And then lastly, it's where do those messages even end up once they're sent? And we found that only about 12% of the companies we surveyed actually even reached our main inbox. So when you've got sales kind of up against all of this, it's no surprise really that there is inconsistencies in the engagement, because when you're talking about them having to follow up with, dozens, hundreds of leads every week or every month, that's a lot to manage, and to hit all of these points effectively, which is what has to happen in order to actually yield meetings and pipeline and conversions and all these things that we all feel pain around.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so true. So true. And the result of this inconsistent customer engagement is the fact that you wind up having what we call a leaky funnel. And if you just think very simplistically, I know a lot of people's funnels could be a little bit more complex than this, But if you just think really simplistically about kind of 3 stages of your funnel, one is around capturing new leads. The other is around nurturing those leads through the funnel. And then that includes not only what marketing is doing, but then there's that sales outreach that's happening, right? And moving things from that awareness to consideration to that actual purchase decision state. And what we see here is that if you're a new visitor, like coming to a website, absolutely, if you don't have certain technology on your website, you can be an unengaged website visitor. Hopefully the content is well presented on your website. Hopefully it's easy to navigate, but oftentimes it's tough to find that information that you're looking for. And what happens is that either if you just assume you have compelling messaging on your homepage, what still can happen is you could have high bounce rates off of that. Okay, so the next area is around when you get those leads that are coming in and they're coming into your marketing automation system, and there's so many to choose from. We just are showing a splattering of options here for you. But when you have that those leads coming into your marketing automation platform, how well are you able to then do kind of those next set of programs that help nurture those leads? And one of the key areas is around that frustration we talked about events and webinars, right? We're investing a lot in them. Are we getting the ROI on that? What are your webinar and event programs, are you not getting as many people to the table as you'd like, right? Are you getting strong registration? Are you actually getting strong attendance? That's kind of before the event. But what happens after the event? When you're now sending those leads over probably traditionally to your SDR team, and now you're expecting your SDR team to follow up. How long is it taking for them to follow up? Is it a day? Is it 3 days? Is it a week? Is it a week plus? You'd be surprised on what we hear from other organizations in terms of how long it's taking them to follow up, and then not really being able to know if then they were followed up as persistently as you just heard Amanda describe. And then let's say you have your leads coming in and they're engaging, but they haven't hit that threshold yet on your scoring to actually be marketing qualified and then passed over to sales. And so what can you do to really better, as marketing leaders, what can we do to really better qualify those opportunities a little bit more before we're able to hand them off over to sales? And then when they are in sales's hands, right? We come back to that persistence and promptness situation where it could be low touch. As we said, 60% up to 60% of companies we surveyed only touched a lead at the most twice. You could hear Forrester today says that there's always over 27 marketing and sales combined interactions to really move a lead through the funnel. Let's just assume sales has about half of those, right? If you're only doing 2 touches, that's too low. That's not going to cut it. On your other leads, right? So we know that we want the SDR team and the sales team to go after those contact us demo requests, but on those other leads, there oftentimes are no touch on these. And then as they're working through, and let's say the SDR is doing their outreach and conducting it, and maybe they're using different tools to help automate and drive some of that sales acceleration, those tools don't help you drive that kind of engagement. What happens if there's no engagement that's coming back and it's now unresponsive? What can you do there? And then ultimately, as time, we know just in sales, we always say this, right? Time kills all deals. If the lead has gone silent or dormant and gone inactive and there's been no engagement, greater than 90 days, then all of a sudden that goes into an entirely different bucket. Now these leads are unnoticed. And so what are you able to do to really drive retargeting of those leads in a more automated and scalable fashion? And so all these areas where you see here are just opportunities to drive leaks in your funnel. And if you have leaks in your funnel, it means that you are losing opportunities to turn those leads into meetings, turn those meetings into opportunities, turn those opportunities into revenue. Okay, so how can companies utilize conversational AI to drive better customer engagement and start plugging those holes in your funnel? Well, I'm going to walk through kind of the 5 areas that we think you can use this in, and we've seen customers be very successful using conversational AI. All right, well, first off, we're going to talk about improving event and webinar ROI. But first, like to say that, sure, you could have website visitors coming to your website, and you can use conversational AI today to drive that engagement in real time. No doubt about it. You can use it to capture those leads and pass them on into your system. And everybody is pretty familiar with that. You're probably used to something called the website chat that is there and available today. And that's pretty much table stakes. But what's really interesting and where conversational marketing is going and now is expanding is let's use that conversational marketing, not just in that real-time website chat, but let's also now use it in the more kind of asynchronous type of communications that happens as you're nurturing leads. And that could be over email, that could even also be over SMS. It depends what works for your target audience and your customers. And so here, if we think about the kind of the 5 areas, I'm going to be covering in the first part, how can you use conversational AI to improve your event and webinar ROI, right? And so we're going to talk about that. The second area is how can you use it to really qualify those pre-MQLs, so you could see if those leads better fit your ICP before you hand them off over to sales. And then in the third area, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you take some of those. It could be more what you would call a hot lead, like an A lead, that contact us demo request. Are you following up in the right SLA? This is where promptness really matters. If somebody comes in and they're doing a demo request and it takes you more than 30 minutes to respond back, the likelihood of you connecting with them and getting that meeting is going to drop precipitously. So you really want to get after that. And then the other area is just, you've got all those B, C, and D leads. We're going to show you just examples of how you can engage that inbound demand. And then let's give sales a hand, right? They've got so many things that they are focusing on. If they've got active pipeline opportunities, that is exactly what they should be focused on and pushing that into to be able to hit their revenue targets. But what happens in every sales stage and cycles, if there's a couple of those opportunities, or it could be even more than that across an entire sales organization, you've got accumulation of stalled ops. What can you do with those stalled opportunities so that you can revive them back up again? And then, of course, never forget those leads that have gone inactive, right? Let's reactivate that dormant demand and bring them back into the fold and see if they're back in market. So with that, let's talk through the first one. How do we improve and increase event and webinar ROI, Amanda?
Yeah, so this is kind of the thing that is supporting that pain that sales feels, where they're saying, hey, I'm doing all of this outreach and I can't connect with anyone to help drive attendance at the webinar or even convert people post-webinar. So this is what we use even at Conversica to help support sales and also ensure that we're getting consistent touches on the people who have registered and attended our webinars and events. So essentially the way that this is triggered is when the leads go into our marketing automation platform, we just trigger these leads to be handed off to Conversica, and then Conversica kind of takes it from there and starts outreach. And so our AI assistant references whatever event or webinar the person had just attended and asks to be helpful. So, hey, would you like to have the link to the webinar or to the speaking session at the event that you missed? And so, it kind of goes from there. And as soon as the lead responds, the AI assistant can kind of carry the conversation through, ultimately trying to schedule a meeting for the SDR. And the other thing that this actually supports, and we found that it supports, is if we do this kind of outreach on our event and webinar leads, even if it doesn't result nice and tidy in a meeting, the sales reps have a lot easier time getting a hold of these leads later. So once we've done this kind of warm up, and then they do eventually get handed off as MQLs, when the SDR does their outreach, their connect rate goes up. And so that frustration around connect rates is kind of resolved by sort of lending sales a helping hand using our AI assistant.
For sure. And I think one of the things you could see here is that just taking a look at this is like the conversations, first off, the conversations that we offer for these use cases are they're pre-built conversations. They're based on best practices of over 10 years of running marketing and sales conversations for marketing sales organizations. They are, one of the things that they're very human-like, and they're very polite and friendly. And that's something that we put a lot of effort here in Conversica to make sure that, one, we take we want to take the complication and the work away from the customer and really put all of our knowledge and best practices back in the conversations. And so we know that we could drive greater, our research and history has shown us that we can drive greater response when you do simple things like maintaining the personalized message, being specific to the topic at hand, being relevant in your message, having a clear call to action, and then being polite with every single interaction that the AI assistant delivers. All right, let's go to the next one. So that's increase event and webinar ROI. What about pre-qualifying leads for sales?
Yeah, so this is a great example of how we handle content syndication. So those pesky leads that sales is kind of, not interested in dealing with. This is how we try to kind of support sales and bubble up the content syndication leads that are truly interested in having a conversation. So in this example, again, we've customized and we've been able to reference that the lead has downloaded our report, Augmenting Sales with Intelligent Virtual Assistants, and it's checking in to ask if there are any questions. So, it asks, it reminds the lead who we are, what we do, why we're reaching out. And then rather than jumping straight to asking for a meeting, which is kind of awkward, especially when we're talking about things like content downloads, the AI assistant is wanting to gather more information for sales. So, it's asking a pre-qualifying question. Can you tell me more about your current lead qualification process? And the lead responds and says, thanks, we're having a hard time with lead follow-up consistency. And the AI assistant responds and offers up that we can help and that we'd love to set up time with a representative. The lead responds back that they would like a call, gives some time options. The AI assistant can verify based on the information that we have that phone number that we have is the best number to reach them at. And I should mention the beauty of this part of all of our conversations is when that phone number is verified, if the lead responds and says, no, that's not the right number, or no, actually call me on my cell, here's the number, the AI assistant can update the CRM with that information so that the sales rep knows exactly where they're supposed to call. So, so that's kind of how these run through, and this just really helps our reps, again, kind of filter through the more noise. And additionally, it helps marketing get a feel for how interested are all of these leads that we've generated through all of these content programs.
Exactly. And Amanda, does the AI assistant only send the initial message out once? And is it just kind of, should we be expecting kind of a response based on one attempt?
No. So this is the ideal world, right? Where you send one note and magically your lead is interested and would like a meeting, which I feel like never happens. But the AI assistant is persistent. And so in another example, it would send this initial message, and if it received no response, in 2 or 3 days, it would reach back out again and say, hi, I'm still here. I'm just following up on my previous email. I really would love to know if you have any questions about the report you downloaded. And it will ask that qualifying question again. And so we can be super persistent and consistent with our outreach. And then as soon as the lead does respond, it'll take it from there. If it doesn't get a response, it'll stop. Obviously, it's not going to be a pest. But the nice part is, like, from a marketing perspective, I can see that the AI assistant has stopped its outreach, And I can then trigger other things to happen from the marketing side to try to warm this lead back up again. So I can add them to a retargeting campaign. I can add them to a nurture campaign, and try to bubble them up a little further before then I hand it back off to the AI assistant to do its work again. So it's a nice seamless process that you can do a lot. It's pretty flexible and you can do a lot with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting about these pre-qualifying questions, another question we get a lot of is how many pre-qualifying questions can you ask? An AI assistant can actually handle up to 2 pre-qualifying questions. I've actually seen it where it's asked the first question, tried a couple of attempts, actually got a response back. The response didn't really answer the question. The AI assistant was able to understand that it didn't answer the question correctly, came back with a very relevant response, and then asked the second question that was configured to it, maybe thinking that might trigger a response back. Then the lead actually responded back to the second question, and to complete the cycle, the second question was good, but because it needed to answer that first question, the AI assistant came back again and asked that first question again. And ultimately what you saw, this back and forth between the AI assistant and the lead. And then ultimately it got to a resolution that made the most sense for both the organization and the lead, the prospective buyer as well. So that's just kind of the idea. This is the sophistication of the conversational AI capabilities in the platform that are serving, empowering these intelligent virtual assistants. All right, let's go to the third one here. Engage and convert inbound demand. I mean, this is the whole pool of MQLs or qualified leads that you're handing on over to sales. How can an AI assistant help here, Amanda?
Yeah, so this is the timeliness. This is addressing the promptness of outreach. So when we get a demo request on our website or a contact us form fill on our website, or perhaps somebody MQLs naturally, like they bubble up via our scoring, we want to make sure that those leads get touches on them immediately. And so this is an example of our demo request follow-up. So of course, the lead comes into the marketing automation platform, it syncs over to Salesforce. We get an alert out to the SDR, but unfortunately our SDRs are not just waiting with their hands out for only demo request leads, and that is all they have time to do. They also have other things that they're doing, and maybe getting a touch on a demo lead takes them, a little bit to get around to. But our AI assistant has their backs, because the AI assistant can then reach out and say, hey, thanks for requesting a demo. I'd be happy to send you some more information. Here's again a reminder of who we are and why we're even emailing you. And then it offers up the opportunity to set up a call. And this is really the skill that schedules a lot of meetings, because obviously we're using it against leads that are already pretty interested in us, but it really takes care of that promptness piece, which makes a huge difference in conversion rate and also just conversion timing. So in this example, the lead responds, thanks for the follow-up. I actually was already in touch with Derek because Derek happened to be on top of it this time around. The AI assistant responds back and says, thanks for confirming, you're going to be great. And then the beauty of it is it then will reach out again a few days later and make sure that the lead got all of the information that they needed, that they got all the answers to their questions. And the nice thing about this is so often I think these introductory meetings happen and then, you don't hear from people again. They either ghost or they get distracted or if they fall by the wayside. And again, the SDR has a lot on their plate. And so they don't necessarily have time to be harassing people into, having another call with them. And so the AI assistant has that air cover to say, if you didn't get all your questions answered, let's talk again. But if you did, then that's great. Here's a nice friendly touch point. And the lead says, in this case, yes, I got everything I needed. Looking forward to the next meeting. And then the AI assistant's job is done in this scenario.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's really interesting here, some people might say, well, what if, the lead here, Catherine, responded back and said, no, you know what? I haven't heard from Derek. What happens here is that the AI assistant will understand that and be like, wow, there needs to be further action here. And we'll send an alert to Derek notifying him that, hey, you need to get on this because I'm hearing back that Catherine said that she doesn't have a meeting set up. So throughout this whole process, whether it's on the use cases you've seen so far, not only is there an interaction between the AI assistant and the lead, in this instance, example, Catherine, but there's always a touch point and an interaction between the AI assistant and the sales rep that is attached to this contact within the account. And so in this case, if it's a positive response and we know that this is something where we want to move forward with, which we call a hot lead, that then the rep will get alerted and notified, and also anything that needs to get updated, like a status or information, will get updated into the CRM. If there's anything that comes back that says, hey, this causes maybe some risk or some concern, or maybe there needs to be some follow-up action, the right type of status and then the right type of alert will be sent to the rep so that they can jump on it and get involved. So just know that there is a back and forth that is happening that the AI assistant is managing between itself and the lead, and then itself and the rep. Okay, let's talk about number 4, accelerate stalled opportunities. Oh, my favorite. So in this one, what we're really thinking about is, let's say your rep has reached out and the things were going well, but then there's just been some time since the last interaction. And so what you see in this conversation is that the AI assistant's reaching out, introducing themselves and referencing the name of the rep that was what was part of the opportunity, right? That was driving the opportunity. And how we do this is, yes, we grab the rep's name from the CRM, we put it naturally right into the conversation, and it says here, very much so, you know, Dave asked me to reach out to you. We wanted to see if we could help answer any questions you may have about adding the solution to your tech stack this quarter. We're happy to include anybody else who should be involved in this conversation. Can I schedule a call again with Dave, right? And so this is getting sent out, and then again, it could take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touches, however many touches it might take, but then to drive a lead response back. And you see here, the lead says, thank you. Yeah, no, this is still a priority, but what's common response? But we need to find the budget. You know, can we reach out to you in a few days? Notice here how it says a few days. What the AI assistant will do, now this is probably tiny, but it says down here March 16th. What the AI assistant will do is interpret that few days, and then it'll reach back out a few days, literally a few days later. So this is what we call check back later. And this is a key feature requirement in the sense that the AI assistant knows it's not now, it's let's check back in a few days. And so this is exactly what it does. So a few days later, the AI assistant will reach out and say, hey, you mentioned now would be a better time to talk. Can I set up a call with Dave, right? And the response comes back, yes, that would be great. We're free next Thursday before 12. Again, confirms the phone number and moves on, and then tries to close out the conversation. So check back later, really key feature, again, that you want in your AI assistant. And just to think a little bit more about this in terms of using conversational sales to accelerate before making that close loss cost, because if you're working with pipeline opportunities that get stalled, right, then you need to be able to see if you could revive them again. So let's just say, like, there's a couple ways to think about it. First, opportunities get stalled at the SDR level, right? So an SDR contacts the lead, but then the lead goes dark. So just think about it, comes in through your CRM, the SDR does what they're supposed to do, they follow up, they're not getting any kind of real interaction. And so what you might want to do is activate that unresponsive demand, post that sales attempted, which an AI assistant can do, and hopefully drive towards that hot lead and continue to push that opportunity where it is in the funnel down the process. The other one is you have a real active live pipeline opportunity that has dollars associated to it. And like the example we just saw, the last rep interaction may have no activity for, I don't know, anywhere from 4 to 15 days. And then what you want to do is you want to push that pipeline forward, right? So you could use an AI assistant here to try and help accelerate those stalled opportunities and turn them into a hot lead. All right, so gone through 4. What that leaves us with the 5th use case of applying conversational AI in your marketing and sales funnel. And that's reactivating that pesky dormant demand. And here's a great example, right? It's one of those things where they could have interacted or shown previous interest in your product or solution, right? And that could have been, maybe it was 90 days ago, 120, 180, whatever your SLA is within your own organization. You can set that up. We here at Conversica, for our own selves, because obviously you can see we love eating our own dog food here, is that we look every quarter, we run our AI assistant against our dormant leads. And so here it says, I see you previously shown interest in our solution. I want to make sure that you received all the information you were looking for. As a reminder, Conversica AI assistant gives the value prop statement and says, hey, can we set up a call to discuss further? And then, as you see again, this is an example of it coming back out as another unique attempt. And then ultimately, within that cadence structure that you set up within the AI assistant, you hopefully drive towards a lead response. In this case, we got a response. And so it says here, though, again, can you reach out in a few weeks when I have more time? That was back at the end of April. Then you see literally 3 weeks later, the AI assistant does follow out. Now I'm going to ask you this question. How well does your SDR and sales team actually do that themselves? To remember across, again, of all the hundreds of leads that they work, any given week or month, to remember all the ones that they have to check back later on. You take that complication away that, frankly, we as people are not very good at, but something like an AI assistant is excellent at. And so being able to do that follow-up, be top of mind again for that lead, and then drive towards that next level of engagement. And as we said, when any time that the lead responds back, Conversica will always notify the rep to get that meeting scheduled and follow up the lead to let them know that their rep will be will be contacting them and confirming that phone number. So 5 key use cases that we talked about here. And so as I'm going through this, we want to, after this time, to do a poll, right, for you guys. And so the poll that we want to give you is, as we work through this, which of these use cases resonate best with you as you talked us through it? Pre-qualifying those inbound lead before sales handoff. Remember asking a couple of those BANT-like questions to see if the lead fits within your ICP. What about your event and webinar program? Do you believe you're getting the right ROI off it? Do you believe you're driving enough people to those events and webinars? And more importantly, do you believe you're following up quickly and promptly thereafter? And then with all of those qualified leads you're handing off over to sales, are your sales teams able to engage and convert with that inbound demand, so you could convert and turn them more into meetings, and hopefully those meetings into pipeline? Do you see kind of with the seasonality, do you have seasonality where you can have pipeline opportunities that get stalled? How do you want to be able to accelerate those stalled opportunities? And always making sure that you are returning, getting a return on those marketing investments. Are you going after and retargeting some of those older leads to see if they're actually back in market today? So hopefully you had a chance to do this, and let's see what the results are. All right, so what do we see the results? Which of these resonates the best with you? Pre-qualifying inbound leads before sales handoff. That's the top one. Really cool. Great. I'd love to hear from people in the chat. Don't go ahead and either post a question or put in the chat, what is it about that really interests you? And then the second area is around accelerating stalled opportunities. Yeah, I mean, it happens quite a bit, right? Sales have to focus on the active one. There could be stalled ones. There's only so much bandwidth that we have. How can we continue to help support sales? And we've got to improve event and webinar ROI. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And then engage and convert inbound demand. Interestingly enough, the two are equal in their in kind of the importance. Amanda, do you have any thoughts on this as you're taking a look at that?
I think that it is. I'm actually kind of surprised a little bit about accelerate stalled opportunities being so high up on the list. Just because as marketers, my brain is so focused on the top of the funnel, and that I kind of forget about, helping sales accelerate those stalled opportunities. So I'm pretty actually excited to hear that the audience is thinking about accelerating stalled opportunities and what you can do to help sales. But yeah, otherwise I think this makes a lot of sense. We obviously have a lot of responsibility to make sure that sales is prioritizing what they have to work on, and these are the kinds of things that help them do that and be effective.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And so, as we think about this, how do you map this to your lead engagement workflow? And I think this is a little bit more representative of just the complexities in our workflow, right? You do have, if you think of it, and I know the buyer's journey is nowhere near linear. We understand that 110%. The buyer's journey is on the buyer's time. We know that 70% of buyers are informing themselves and making a decision well before they're ready to talk to a salesperson. And so that's why it's even more important to understand, yes, they're self-serving in terms of their own knowledge, but at the same time, you have an opportunity to directly connect with them in a very personalized manner to see exactly where they are in their buyer's journey, and if they're ready to talk to somebody or if they need to learn more, and what specifically is it that they're looking for. And so, here you think about it, conversational marketing. The one thing, if you can think about it, is about today is so much more than just website chat. Conversational marketing is supporting more use cases across the top of the funnel. It is doing it over website chat for sure, but also more importantly over email and even other communication channels like SMS. And then being able to drive the right conversation for that use case is really important. The other areas around conversational sales, support your sales team so that they're driving those MQLs, turning them into meetings, and then being able to accelerate those stalled opportunities. And then make sure that you always have coverage. Don't have any leaks in your funnel. Use conversational AI, whether it's for remarketing or for continuing to drive and work towards those leads and those meetings and those opportunities. Now, overall, when we take a look at our entire pool of our entire customer base, we have close to 2,000 customers in our base, ranging from multiple industries, from B2B industries and technology, telecom, business services, manufacturing, to B2C industries and automotive, higher education, sports and media and entertainment, and health and wellness. Overall, what we have seen is we can drive really much better engagement rates. And engagement doesn't just mean I opened an email. Engagement rate here means I responded to that communication. So it's a response, and of that response, how many of those actually turned into a hot lead, or what we would call a connect. A connect here is what you can see. So for conversational marketing, close to 8%, hot lead 2.15. You can read the numbers. The other thing about this too is driving better engagement faster. So turning each stage in the cycle, right, can be accelerated so that you could get to that hot lead rate or get to that answer faster, and do so by continuing to progress those opportunities throughout your funnel. And you can see what it's like for conversational marketing, conversational sales, and we haven't talked about it yet, but I'm going to talk about it at the end, about conversational customer success. What that is if you have a customer success team or an account management team that's focused on the post-sale of your customer, how can you use an AI assistant to drive that personalized engagement at scale? Super applicable to that department as well. So I want to leave you here with a customer case study that we have. ServiceNow uses Conversica's AI assistants today. What was their problem? They wanted to work every lead to the fullest. They wanted to institute a no lead left behind policy. They had a large number of inbound leads that exceeded the sales capacity to follow up. And this is another thing. We've been hearing more and more about this, right? Whether you call it the double funnel or the hybrid funnel, today a lot of complex B2B marketing and sales organizations are running both kind of that traditional funnel, that funnel from leads to MQLs, et cetera, but they're also focused on running an ABM program. And so what you see here is that if you're running the ABM program as well, right, you're going to probably think about, how is my sales team and my SDR team going to be focused more in supporting that ABM strategy? So they have an account-based selling strategy. And if those SDRs are only focused on inbound, they have a harder time than just being focused on working those outbound, and driving that account penetration. So what we see is, we see a lot of companies wanting to use our AI assistants to go work those inbound leads, especially if it's the inbound leads that are not a part of the target account list. And then they want to have their ADRs go focus, or the SDRs or BDRs, whatever you call them, focus on that outbound prospecting. And for ServiceNow, they had 4 key kind of elements, real key values that they saw. One, rapid payback. So they were able to, in the first 6 months, work 9,000 leads, like 9,000 leads, right? Really, really good volume of leads. They found 43 hot leads from that 9,000 leads in the first 3 months. Their ongoing business impact in 1 year that we just happened to calculate was like they were able to generate $6.3 million of pipeline attributed to Conversica. That resulted quickly in $400K of revenue. And then the efficiency gains. This is a big deal. Instead of thinking that you always have to throw people at the problem, in this instance, you're getting workforce performance and productivity gains on demand and on the fly, right? So being able to use an AI assistant, you can get an additional 25,000 hours worked, right? And saving close to $800,000 of labor costs in this case, over a 2-year time period. So the dollars that would have been required to invest specifically, let's just say, in an SDR team to support this level of productivity at scale can now be reallocated to other parts of the sales organization to help drive revenue generating activities. And lastly, the data quality impact. Because the AI assistant not only can verify the phone numbers, verify the emails, it will also update those things into the CR, anything new found into the CRM, keeping your data quality healthy and intact. So, so just to summarize, we covered a lot today, but just know this, that you can use conversational AI across your entire customer lifecycle to help you attract higher quality leads at that top of the funnel, to acquire more customers faster in your sales organization in that middle of the funnel, and then to help you grow customers into advocates in that post-sale customer success or account management function. And let me talk about that for a second. So today's world, customer success teams or account management teams, a lot of them can be highly leveraged. Sometimes they might have a 50-to-1 or 100-to-1 account to rep ratio. And when you have that kind of highly leveraged team, it's really hard to deliver personalized customer experiences and engagement at scale. And so this is where an AI assistant can really come in and augment a customer success team, from whether it's onboarding a new customer, sending out that immediate welcome page, to then being able to drive that customer health. The time it takes a customer success rep to be able to schedule that account review, whether it's that quarterly business review, that monthly business review, or that exec business review, it takes a lot of time. Using an AI assistant to help get that scheduled saves time for the rep to focus on the thing that they need to do, which is present a high value summary and briefing to their clients. Then being able to stay on top of renewals, right? So those renewal programs, yeah, you can send out a mass email and say it's time to renew, but the real key thing is, how early can you start that, and can you drive a personalized experience and outreach on your renewal programs? A lot of times customer success teams are taking a look at the utilization, their customer utilization of the products or services. If they're being underutilized, great way to go reach out and drive some advocacy to increase utilization, and then collecting customer feedback. This is a real interesting one. You can use an AI. We have many customers today that use their AI assistant to go drive those survey requests, to feed into their NPS scores. And what we have found is that sometimes customers feel more comfortable responding back to a customer survey that an AI assistant has requested versus their own account manager, because they've built such a nice relationship with their account manager. They don't want to submit, they may not submit as authentic feedback as they would. So in that light, it's great to have that kind of intermediary, quote unquote, other party to reach on out and say, hey, give us that feedback. And then lastly, identify expansion opportunities. This is a really great way to say, hey, we saw that you're utilizing this, you're using this product right now. We have a complementary product that we think you might really like, right? Again, an AI assistant can begin that outreach and really drive towards engagement to get that meeting set to have that conversation. So with that, I think that covers it. We covered 5. Hopefully you walk away with the idea of the 5 kind of key use cases you can use conversational AI in your marketing and sales functions. And just really wanted to thank you for attending today. I think we're going to open it up now to questions. So Cynthia, back to you.
Great. Thank you, Rashmi. And I just want to let the audience know that there's still time to get some questions in. So we'll start with the first one. And it is, do you have to build the workflows into the solution?
Amanda, do you want to answer that one, or do you want me to take it?
I can take it, and I can say no, and thank God, no. Because having, had experience with other solutions where you do have to build out everything kind of from scratch, it's super time consuming. You have to test it all of the time. You have to make sure there's no gaps. And it just leaves too much up for risk of breakage, I guess. And so with Conversica, it's great because you get the level of personalization that you need in that some of those examples that we talked about where it was referencing the name of the event or it was referencing the name of the piece of content that someone downloaded. And you can get personalized in that aspect down to, obviously we're referencing their name and all of that good stuff as well. But I don't have to tell the AI assistant at every single stage of its outreach what I want it to say. I basically point it in the right direction with some context, and after that it just runs. So no, you do not have to build all of these workflows from scratch.
Okay, great. Thank you. Our next question is, do you have to write the emails or conversations from scratch?
Yeah, so much similar to Amanda's answers on workflows, the answers on conversations and writing them from scratch, the answer is no. So again, we have well over 70 skills that we support, and those skills support over 600 conversations. Those conversations have been pre-built and battle tested across 1 billion different interactions. We kind of know what works well and what doesn't. Remember that thing we talked about on the 4 Ps about performance? We know that there are certain triggers that drive deliverability into your inbox. We know there are certain things that spam filters just don't want to see. And so we avoid sometimes what you fall when you have kind of emails written from scratch, your performance and your deliverability will suffer. And so we really focus on building robust conversations, again, taking all the best practices of what drives performance and not only reaching the inbox, but also engaging people to want to respond. So you don't have to waste any time writing those. What we do offer, though, is we do offer what's called the conversation editor. The conversation editor allows you to take a conversation and edit it with your business domain specific language. And you could do that across the different fronts, whether it's that first intro statement to that informational statement to that value statement, and of course your CTA. But a lot of those, again, can be set up as variables, so it's going after the campaign. So you don't have to do these one-offs every time. It knows how to adapt to the different campaigns that you are running.
Excellent. Our next question is from Nicole, who asks, how can AI assistants help B2B companies that are launching virtual events and summits before, during, and after the event?
Go ahead, Amanda.
I can take this one.
Go for
it. So the last year, we've run about 1 billion virtual events, I think, at this point. And with actually some pretty great success. And it's funny, I've been talking to a lot of other marketers, and I feel like the success has been super mixed, mostly due to just the level of engagement that people are getting out of these events. And I think that the thing that has made us successful is really doing a good job of segmenting these lists when we get them. So segmenting out the people who attend the booth versus the people who attend our speaking session versus the people who showed interest in certain topics, and making sure that that messaging is super customized when we are conducting outreach. And what we use the AI assistants for to help support is prior to the event, rather than, of course, we enable our sales team to use all of our marketing programs to their advantage. So, hey, here's a webinar you should use to invite your MQLs and try to get, a hand raise out of them. Oftentimes that's not going to be a priority for them. And so rather than relying on sales to help drive attendance and interest in an event, we'll use an AI assistant because we know that we can get super consistent outreach and be super targeted in who we want the AI assistant to reach out to. And then, during, I think, is actually a really interesting use case that I haven't experienced a lot with, but I can think of a lot of different use cases for it, where, especially when we go back to, the in-person stuff, but even virtually, say you've got a speaking session that is at, 2:00 on Tuesday, and perhaps you got a copy of, the list from the day before of the people who have attended the event. I would put that list into a campaign and stick my AI assistant on it to remind everyone that I have a speaking session at 2:00, because that, the event vendor is going to give you that full list. And the more people you can drive to your speaking session, obviously the more leads you're going to get out of that event. And then for follow-up, this is kind of, goes back to that use case that we talked about earlier with getting more ROI out of your events and webinars. But, making sure, again, that the AI assistant is pointed in the right direction with the right messaging for each of your segments. So, for example, we definitely use our AI assistant to follow up with our booth visitors and just ask those qualifying questions. So, thanks for stopping by our booth. How are you managing your lead management process now? Or asking a question that's directly related to the content that we covered in our speaking session at the event, for example. So there's kind of a theme there. So it just helps us be super consistent and cohesive, and it helps us squeeze the most out of these, especially these virtual events, where I think it's been really hard to get engagement and ROI out of in a timely manner. So.
Okay, we have time for one last question, and it's from Mark. Does the AI assistant populate the sales rep calendar when they need to access the suspect prospect? And does the AI facilitate referrals, and at what stage?
Yeah. So the answer to that is the AI assistant. You can provide like a link, a calendar link, and the AI assistant can deliver that calendar link, and then the lead or the contact can go ahead and use that link to schedule the meeting. In terms of the second question, in terms of referrals, if you mean by referrals, can we help drive a referral process? Yes, we can, right? So if you wanted to go do an outreach to an existing customer and say, could you possibly be a referral? Would you be interested in becoming a referral for us, or drive that type of communication? Absolutely, an AI assistant can do that type of outreach.
Excellent. Well, it looks like we're out of time. Thanks again to Rashmi and Amanda for this engaging presentation. If we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to pass that along to Conversica. On behalf of Martech, I want to thank everyone in our audience for attending this webinar. Enjoy the rest of your day.